Come and check out this fun tutorial of Butterick 6330. Hi YouTube, I'm Crystal of crystalsewsandstuff.com. Welcome back to the channel where I share sewing pattern reviews, sewing tips and techniques, and other fun related content. So today I'm going to be sharing with you a fun tutorial of Butterick 6330 View C. And I made this really cute dress in this fiery red cheetah print from So Much Fabric, and I'll leave a link to this fabric below. So you're going to need a fabric of this kind of weight in order to sew this up. And this tutorial is part of the Sew Wardrobe series that I've created with Tea of Crumpetsteandsewing here on YouTube. And I'll leave a link to her channel where she'll be sharing a fun sleeve hack to this dress, as well as the tutorial on View A, the jacket from this pattern as well. This view is also a great dress that you can sew up for the Sew Maxi for Mother's Day that we're hosting this year, where you go ahead and sew up a maxi dress, skirt, pants, or jumpsuit between April 11th and May 16th, 2021. So now let's go ahead and get into the tutorial. Okay, so before I get started cutting out my pattern pieces, I always check for fit adjustments. And so with this pattern, I'm checking to see whether the waistline is going to hit me where it needs to, and also the hip line. What I do is I go ahead and I mark down here where the seam allowance is for the bodice piece. And for this particular pattern, it's 1 inch. Usually it's 5/8 inches, but for this pattern, it's 1 inch. And so I drew a line at the 1 inch mark, and then I attached it where the notches match up here. And this is the waistline, and you can tell where the waistline is. It says waistline, it has this little circle here. And then you can also tell the hip line because it has this circle here, and then the measurements right here, and then the bust line is indicated up here with the same little circle. And so that's how you can go ahead and tell where everything is hitting you, whether it's hitting you where you want it to hit you. That's the first thing I do. And then the next thing I do is I attach the shoulder seam. So this little triangle shows you where the seam line is for the shoulder seam, and so you match up those notches with your pattern pieces wrong sides together. And you can also use your ruler to determine where the seam line is, but generally this triangle is 5/8 inches on a commercial pattern. And so then you go ahead, put it up on your body to determine where everything is, and then make your pattern changes based on that on the lengthen and shorten line. So there's a lengthen and shorten line here on the bodice, and there's another lengthen and shorten line here on where the hip line is. You go ahead and try it on your body, and then you make your adjustments accordingly. So this is just a super quick way that I like to do tissue fitting. There's a more detailed way for you to do it in the Fit for Real People book, but this is just the basic way I do it, especially when it's a really simple pattern with not a lot of pattern pieces and very few adjustments. And so what I like to go ahead and do is I go ahead and pin the shoulder seams together, and then I line it up to my body at the center front. And so then you can tell where the waistline and everything is going to hit you. So now see, the waistline right here is all the way down here, but I want it to be up about another 1.25 inches or so because it's a little bit low for me, and the hip line is a little bit low for me as well. And so when I raise up the waistline, that's going to raise up the hip line, and it should be able to hit me at the fullest part of my hips once I raise it up 1.25 inches, because the hip line is about 1.25 inches or so too low. I can tell from this basic tissue fit that I need to add a little bit more to the skirt piece, because once I have this lined up to my center front, I can tell that the sides are not hitting me on the side seam. So it's not hitting me at the side area even when I pull it back, so I need a little bit more room here. So I'm going to add another 1/2 inch to each side seam in order to give me a little bit more ease, which goes with how the pattern is designed. Okay, so in order to add the width for the hip area, because this pattern goes up to a size 14 and usually I wear a 16, so I'm adding a 1/2 inch to the hip line. And so this is the circle where the hip line is. So what I did was added some tracing paper to the side seam, and then I went up to the hip line and I added a line straight across where the hip line is. And this circle shows you where the hip line is. And so since my hips are 42 and then the finished measurement is 43, I went on and added a 1/2 inch here. And so that gives me, and if you have to multiply your cut seams by the amount that you add to get how much more you're gonna end up with. And so a 1/2 inch, and so a 1/2 inch times 4 is 2 inches. And so you're gonna end up with, I'm gonna end up with a 45 inch hip line. And that's good for me, so I can have a little bit more ease, which aligns with how the pattern is designed. So I added a dot a 1/2 inch from the hip line, and then I graded out from the notch down to the hip line. Then I continue all the way down to the hemline to keep that same width all the way down. And on the bodice piece, I added a line 1.25 inches away from the lengthen and shorten line, and then I retaped it to 1.25 inches on the front bodice piece, as well as on the back bodice piece, because what you do to the front, you want to go ahead and do to the back, so everything will be even. Also, be sure to move your notches if you once you added the extra width to the back to the pattern. So to sew up this dress, what you're gonna need is your pattern. We're using Butterick 6330, and we're sewing up view C. And so you're gonna need your pattern all cut out and ready to go. And then you're also gonna need some 1/2 inch elastic for the waist seam. And then you're also going to need your favorite marking tools. You can use a friction pen, which is a pen that irons off, goes away when you iron it off. You can also use your chalk marker. This is a Clover reusable chalk ruler, or your chalk roller, whatever your favorite marking tool is, you can use that. Then you're also going to need your pins or possibly clips, whatever you like to use to keep your fabric together. And you're also going to need a safety pin or a bodkin to weave the elastic through the waist channel. So another item that you can use, which is completely optional, is knit stay tape or interfacing, and you can use that to help stabilize your pockets. It helps them stay down just a little bit better. And so this is the Sew Keys brand, and I'll leave links to all of the sewing tools in the description box. And then you're also going to need pattern piece number 6. This is the back bodice piece, and you're going to need to cut 2 of those right sides together on the grain line. And then you're going to also need to mark that. You're going to need to mark your shoulder seams. You're going to make a notch here. Then you're going to make a little triangle here for the shoulder seam as well. And then you have notches here, 2 double notches for your side seam and double notches for your back seam. You also want to mark your center back. So I marked mine with the friction pen. And then you're going to also want to mark your dot right here, and that's for the back. That's for the back opening right here. Also, there's a notch here at the waist seam. So you want to make sure you go ahead and make that notch. Next, you're going to want to go ahead and cut out piece number 7, and number 7 is your bodice front piece, and you're going to want to cut 1 on the fold with right sides together, and then you're going to mark your notches, double notches on the side seam, 1 on the bottom waist seam, and then you have 1 at the shoulder seam, and then you're also going to want to mark your triangle here at the shoulder as well. The next piece you're going to need is piece number 8, and those are your pocket pieces, and you're going to want to cut out 4 mirror image pieces. So you're going to have two facing for one pocket, and then 2 more facing for the other pocket. And then you're going to make sure you mark your notch here on the side seam, and then mark your bottom notch as well. And next you're going to want to cut out piece number 9, and that is your skirt front as well as your skirt back piece. So you need to cut out 2, one for the front and then 1 for the back, and you're going to want to make sure you go ahead and mark your notches and dots. So you have notch up here at the waistline, you have a notch here at the high hip, and then you have a double notch here at the lower hip area, and then you have a notch here at the top. I mean a dot here at the top you need to mark, as well as a dot here on the hip as well. So these are going to be for your pockets. So that's what you're going to go ahead and mark out, and then you're ready to sew. So the first thing I'm going to do is serge all of my pattern pieces, so I won't have to do this later. You can do it after you sew up your seams, but I think this will just speed up the process a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and serge all the edges of my pattern pieces, and I'm using a 3-step and I'm using a 3-thread overlock. You can use 4, but I already had it threaded for 3, so that's what I'm going to do. So after you've serged all of your edges or zigzagged them, and even that's optional, so if you don't want to finish off your edges, you don't have to, because this is a knit and it won't fray. So anyway, what you're going to do is you're going to line up your pattern pieces, your back pieces, sew up the back seam up to this dot right here using a stretch stitch, so a zigzag stitch. You can back stitch a couple times at the end just to make sure that it's really secure. Next, you can go ahead and iron on some fusible interfacing on your shoulder seams. And this stabilizes your shoulder seams so they won't stretch out. So next, what you're going to do is press out your back seam, center back seam, like so. And you're also going to press out this back open area, because we're gonna make a narrow hem with this back area here. So go ahead and press this portion down at a 5/8 inch. So next we're gonna go ahead and sew the back edges down. We're gonna just edge stitch that, and I have on my edge stitch foot. You can also use a blind hem foot, anything with this angle right here, or just pay attention and just sew really straight. You don't even need, you can use your regular foot as well. But I'm gonna use my edge stitch foot, and I'm gonna put it at 2.8 or so, just to because I like any kind of edging to be a little bit wider than your standard length. So I'm doing it at 2.8, and then I'm gonna lower that down, and I'm gonna shift my needle over 3 ticks and then sew down, and we're gonna pivot at this center part and go back up. And I did a little back stitch at the beginning. Okay, so when you get down to this corner, you're gonna pivot. So you're gonna lift your needle, press a foot, turn your fabric, put your presser foot back down, sew straight across. Then when you get to like your serging area, then you lift your presser foot again. Then you turn your fabric, lower your foot, make sure everything underneath is nice and flat. Back stitch at the end. Okay, so once you have sewn up your back seam to the notch, and then stitch down, edge stitch the back opening and interface your shoulder seams, now you're ready to attach your front bodice piece to the back bodice piece. And so you're gonna turn over your back bodice piece, and then you're gonna match up your shoulders, your front bodice piece at the shoulder seams here where the notches are. You can still see the notches through the serging. Then you're gonna pin the shoulder seams down and the side seams down. So once you have everything pinned, you can go ahead and sew down your shoulder seams at 5/8 inch with a zigzag stitch, as well as the side seams at 5/8 inch with a zigzag stitch. You can also just go ahead and use your serger instead, and just instead of using your zigzag stitch, you can sew it down at 5/8 inch as well on your serger instead of on your sewing machine. So now after you've attached your shoulder seams and your side seams, what you're going to do next is fold down your bodice pieces at 5/8 inches. So you can use your ruler or your seam gauge to do that. And you go ahead and pin that down all the way around. So next, after you have it pinned down, you're going to get at a light press to keep everything nice and even. And then you're going to edge stitch all the way around the same kind of way that we did here for this back opening. So I have my edge stitch put on, and then I've moved the needle over a little bit to the right, and I have it on 2.85 stitch length, and I'm going to go ahead and edge stitch this down, and I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and end. So after you edge stitch your neckline down, you're going to repeat the same thing for your armhole. So you're going to fold it down 5/8 and then give it a nice press, and then edge stitch around just like you did for this area right here. Okay, so for the underarm seams, you're going to want to start at the underarm area, not the shoulder area, because just in case you're a little bit off when you line everything up, you can't see that under your arm. And then again, your needle's over about 3 spaces, and then you're just going to go around in a circle and go ahead and make sure you have your fabric on your arm. So if you have an arm extension, go ahead and take that off and put that on here so they can go around in a circle easily. And so you're just going to edge stitch that around. So after you've sewn down your neckline as well as your arm size, you're done with the bodice for now. And so you're going to move on. Now we're going to move on to the skirt pieces. So what you're going to do next is you can optionally add a strip of knit interfacing to your skirt piece here. Just it helps to stabilize the pocket area. So you can go ahead and add some interfacing here, or knit stay tape here, in order to help stabilize your pocket. So you can go ahead and add a strip within the seam allowance. So you want to make sure your seam is gonna hit, so within that 5/8 area right here. So you want to do that for all of your side seams. And then you're going to want to go ahead and put your pockets on, and make sure you have your skirt front or back piece lined up with the top side up, and you can tell by your notches up top to make sure that that's the top area, because you don't want to pin your pockets on to the hem of the skirt. So after you do that, go ahead and place your pocket pieces on the side areas, and you want to make sure you're lining up this flat area to your side seam with right side spacing. And so we're going to sew this down on the front and back pieces of all 4 of your side seams. So after you stitch down your seam for the pocket, what you're going to do is press your seam to the pocket. So both sides of the seam, you're going to press it towards the pocket. And after we press that seam down, the next thing we're going to do is understitch that seam here to the pocket. So you got to make sure this is pressed to this side, because the understitching is going to help make that pocket stay in and not flop around while you're wearing your dress. Okay, so we're going to make sure we have our edge stitch foot or your blind hem foot lined up right in the center seam, and that you have your needle over a little bit. And then you're going to go ahead and sew down and make sure the seam allowance is to the pocket before you go ahead and sew that down. Back stitch. Once you finish applying your pockets and understitching your pockets, what you're going to do next is you're going to sew the front to the back skirt pieces together. So in order to do that, you're going to sew from the top down to this first notch, and if you lost your notches, go ahead and remark them. Then you're going to sew down the pocket piece from the top all the way down and around to this knot, to this other dot, making sure you go ahead and clear your seam from before, and then you're going to go ahead and stitch that all the way down, and you're going to repeat that on both sides. Okay, so we're going to just sew from the top edge down to this first notch. After you sew that down, you're going to go ahead and sew the other side down, and you're going to just sew down around the edge of the pocket. You're going to pivot at your other dot, and then you're going to continue down at 5/8 inches. Okay, so when you get to this part where everything is meeting, make sure everything is nice and flat underneath. You want to make sure there's no bunching. So go ahead and just double check that before you get to your to the dot right here, and then make sure all of your seams are in the right direction. So just double check that before you cross over where the seams meet. So kind of feel up the fabric, make sure everything feels flat underneath, and then you're gonna go ahead and angle that to the dot. You can lift up your presser foot to make sure everything is down, all your seams are down. And once you get to your dot, and make sure you clear the other stitching, lift your presser foot, leave your needle down to pivot, and then you're going to sew the rest down at 5/8 inches and make sure everything is matching again. And you're going to just sew all the way down to the hem. So next you're going to go ahead and attach your skirt to your bodice, and what you're going to do is make sure you have the front side to your front side. So the part where you basted the skirt, that's going to be your front. So you want to make sure your front is matching the front, and then you're going to put your bodice piece inside the bodice skirt, and then you're going to line up your side seams and pin your side seams, and then you're going to match up your notches and just continue pinning everything around till you have everything pinned. So once you have everything pinned, you're going to go ahead and sew from one side seam all the way back around, and make sure your seam allowance is at 1 inch, because that is what's indicated on the pattern. The bottom of your bodice piece as well as the top of your skirt piece indicates that your seam allowance is 1 inch. So go ahead and sew around 1 inch all the way around to attach the two pieces, your front and back, together. So now that you've attached your skirt piece to your bodice piece, you're going to trim down your bodice piece down to 1/4 inch. So after you trim your bodice piece, you're going to pin up the seam allowance of the skirt portion, and then what we're going to do is sew around this edge, leaving a gap, about a 1 inch gap right here, so that you can go ahead and insert your elastic, because that's going to create a casing for you to go ahead and insert your 1/2 inch elastic. Okay, so next, after you went on ahead and sewed up the skirt seam over the bodice seam and left the gap, you're just going to go ahead and attach your safety pin to your elastic, and then just go ahead and thread that through, making sure it doesn't flip on you. Okay, so once you have that all threaded through, you're going to go ahead and just do a zigzag back and forth, and then just go back and then top stitch this little part that where the little gap is. So once you have all of your elastic in your waistband and you went on ahead and top stitched the opening where you closed it up and everything, the next thing you're gonna do is work on your back closure. So the first thing you're gonna do is go ahead and sew on a button, a 1/2 inch button right here on the right hand side, and then you're going to make a thread loop. So what you want to do is go ahead and thread a hand sewing needle, make sure it's double threaded, and then you tie a knot on the bottom like that. Then you're going to come in on this bottom corner right here, like that. Trim off the excess so it won't be in your way. And then what you're going to do is you're going to make a loop on the other corner over here, the top corner, like that. You're going to try to get your loops nice and even, so you can use your finger to help even it out, like that. And then you're going to put it over your loop, your button, like that, and then tighten it up a little bit to how tight you want it. So something like that, so it can stay closed, but you can still get over the button. So somewhere like that would work. A little bit tighter. So about right there. That should work. And then what you're going to do is you're going to make loops on the thread. So you're going to take your needle and go under the loop, pull it through, and then go back through just to make a knot. And then you pull that knot back. So you have a knot. And then you're going to just continue making little knots next to each other all the way down that loop. You just pull it so it can meet the other loop. Like that. It takes a little bit of time, and you may have to start over a couple times sometimes, but basically that's how you do it. Okay, so once you finish doing all of your knots around, it should look like this. And what you're going to do is do one more knot into the fabric near the edge. So do another loop at the end just to secure it. You can do 2 or 3 knots, but do that at the end to secure a little bit more. And then you're just going to thread your needle through the fabric just on the edge, just to kind of bury your threads. Like that. And you just go ahead and trim that off. So the last step is for you to go ahead and hem the bottom of your dress. And so what you're going to do is go ahead and fold up your bottom hem by about 1.25 inches, because that is what the hem allowance is. Or try it on and decide if you need to shorten it a little bit longer. But go ahead and pull up your hem and give it a good press. And then what you're going to do is edge stitch the bottom hem all the way around. And I'm going to be using just a plain straight stitch, because even though this is a knit, this bottom part is really flowy and it doesn't pull across your body, so you shouldn't have any problems with pop seams for the bottom hem. If your fabric is very slinky, you can also add a little bit of your knit interfacing to the bottom hem, but if it's pretty sturdy, you can just go ahead and just turn it over, and then you can just edge stitch all the way around your bottom hem. So starting at the side seam, you're just gonna go ahead and edge stitch all the way around after you've already pressed up your seam and everything. And I have my stitch length at 3 millimeters on a straight stitch, and I'm just gonna go ahead and sew that all the way around. And I've also moved my needle over to 4, that way if it's a little bit off here, I'll still be able to catch the hem. Alright, so that's the tutorial, and now here are some quick pics and twirls of me wearing this really cute dress. Alright, so that's the tutorial of Butterick 6330. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. I think this is a great pattern for beginners, especially for those who have never sewn with knits. There aren't a lot of difficult details in the pattern, so I think you can really sew this up really quickly. And go ahead and check out Tea's channel, where she'll be sharing a hack on adding sleeves to this fun pattern, as well as a tutorial on the jacket from this fun wardrobe pattern. And if you're looking for some other fun, quick and easy dresses to sew up for the Sew Maxi for Mother's Day challenge, head over to Talicia's channel of Creativity by Tea here on YouTube and check out her video where she shares sewing patterns that you can go ahead and sew up in 2 hours or less. So I think that is a really fun video that you should go ahead and check out for some other fun ideas. And I'll also leave a link to the playlist to all the other Sew Wardrobe series tutorials for you to go ahead and check out as well. So let me know what you think about this dress in the comment section below, and if you plan to sew it up. And if you do decide to sew it up and you share it on Instagram, go ahead and tag me so that I can go ahead and check it out, because I love following you all back on Instagram as well. All right, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care. Bye.